Hello and welcome to Blue Collar Breakdown, episode number 8. Wait a minute, how many is that? It's 7, 8, 8. I'm up to 8, 2 months, one a week, maybe more with your support. Okay, this week, it's the big one. It's the big one, Elizabeth. Oh, any Red Fox fans out there? This is it. I had my article published. I told you about it last week. How the Economy is Rigged Against You over at the Libertarian Institute. You got to read it. It's almost a manifesto. And I'm going to maybe not summarize it because you should read it. I know it's long. It's longer than the usual stuff at the Libertarian Institute. It's probably 4,000 words. So we take about 10 minutes, 15 minutes to read. Worth your time. You'll be mad by the time you're done because the economy is rigged against you, unless it's you, Bill Gates, who's watching my podcast. The economy is rigged against you. It's rigged on behalf of the billionaires. The title of this podcast is How Inflation is the Billionaires' Tax Against Workers or something. I forget what I even called it. Inflation is the key means by which wealth is transferred from the working poor and the middle class to the billionaire class. And a lot of people think, well, yeah, it does that, but it's not that much. Think hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's how much it is being transferred. Not every day, but hundreds of thousands of dollars are transferred using credit inflation, and probably maybe $500 to $600 every year through monetary inflation. All right, I'm trying to get up to speed here on these on these comments as they come in. I'm trying to be aware of this as a talk show host. I don't have a producer, so hey, Sentinels of Liberty has greeted me once again. And let me tell you, Sentinels of Liberty, I love that podcast. You got to watch it. It's Scott Horton on a couple weeks ago. It was just dynamite. So you got to absolutely watch Sentinels of Liberty, one of my sister podcasts here. I've been on it as a guest a number of times, and also my friend Sean Kennedy. So you definitely want to listen to that. Back to the topic at hand. Inflation is the billionaire's tax on working people. I know that sounds kind of complicated, or maybe you're just thinking, how does that work? Let me explain it to you. Let me explain it to you in a simple way. All right. In the past, I've talked about how inflation hurts regular working people. And I don't have to really explain it to you because it's kind of intuitive. You go to the grocery store and, gee, my check doesn't buy as much. And maybe I get a raise next year, a cost of living increase, but it's always just trying to catch up to what I really need and what I've had. And the same thing with housing prices, except housing prices are worse, right? Especially in the last 20 years. If you are under 45 and you've tried to buy a house in the last 20 years, you've noticed, gee, these houses are insane. And if you're much older than 45, you think, I bought that house for, my dad's sitting in a house that's probably, wouldn't surprise me if it was worth $1 million and he bought it for 45,000 back in or thereabouts in 1971. Okay. Where does this come from? Now, that's not all just price inflation. There's two kinds of inflation. Think of it as two kinds of inflation. There's credit inflation and price inflation. Now, price inflation is sort of the baseline. All right. It is, think about regular commodities and, whether they be apples or eggs or lollipops. It doesn't always have to be food. Think about this tire repair kit I got off of Amazon to fix the tire that is constantly leaking on my lawnmower. Okay. These things go up in price generally speaking, because they print more dollars digitally anyway. They don't actually do a lot of actual physical printing anymore, but they make more dollars. But the other thing they do is make credit more available and cheaper. That's credit inflation, and that's the big one. Because if you look at housing prices, they have gone through the roof. And it's all okay, look at the price here. Dollar tied to gold. If you look at 1940 to 1970, the price went down when you tie median household income to median home price. When they lifted it and we had regular inflation, the price started rising again. And then, of course, it got a lot worse after 2000 when the Federal Reserve brought interest rates really low. Okay, why is that? Why did it get really, the price get really high, just outpace income? Because it could. Because the price of a home is related to the price of a home is not the sticker price. The price of the home is the sticker price times the interest rate. So when the interest rate goes down, the sticker price goes up. And when the interest rate goes up, the sticker price goes down. Let me give you a graph and show you this. I put this on one of my previous articles, but you could see there are two exceptions. But in almost every instance, you've got here a little chart, and I delayed the home price by 1 year. All right. So it's the 1 year is sort of pushed back in time. But you can see in almost every instance, when the interest rate went up, the price went down. When the interest rate went down, the price went up. Two exceptions. If you look at the data in 1990, the price went down and the interest rate went down. And if you look in 2000, let's see, 2000, well, during the Great Recession, the interest rate went down and the price went down. And those were both recessions. They were recessions. So the price was going to come down, just like all the prices generally come down in recessions. But as a general rule, the interest rate comes down, the price goes up, because housing is purchased almost exclusively on credit, even for rich people. And almost, I might even say, especially for rich people. You might think, oh, well, rich people have a lot of money. Why would they be in debt? No. They are leveraged. They use their money smartly by leveraging it. And the way they do it is, picture, for example, a billionaire real estate developer like Donald Trump. But let's say he's got $1 billion. The goal of the real estate developer is to optimize his real estate holdings. And by optimize, I mean this. He wants 20% equity in his housing, it doesn't matter whether it's single family housing or more likely apartments that he rents out, or it could even be commercial real estate. It doesn't matter. He wants 20% ownership in each of the properties, and he wants to mortgage 80%. That's optimized because he can maximize the rent intake and he can maximize the impact of inflation. And one of the things you find is, okay, a billionaire, a guy who's worth $1 billion, he's a real estate developer. He's going to have title to $5 billion worth of property and $4 billion worth of mortgages. And he's going to have a net value of $1 billion, right? So he has the title to $5 billion, but he also owes $4 billion. Okay. Well, let's say interest rates go way down and the price of the property doubles, which, by the way, it did over and above inflation between 2000 and 2022, 23. What happens to that billionaire? Well, he's no longer a $1 billionaire. He's a sex billionaire. He's $6 billion. Because if his property values double, his property values go from 5 billion to 10 billion. But he still has only 4 billion in mortgages. His renters are still paying off his mortgages, whatever. So now he's got 6 billion. It's like the billionaires love interest rate suppression and the value of the housing market housing going up, because now he can pull his value out of those properties and buy more. So if you have $6 billion in net worth, you can buy, well, times 5, you can buy $30 billion in properties. All right. It's sort of, he went up 6 times 5 is 30, however you want to do the math. He could buy $30 billion worth of properties. He's got 20% equity in each of them. And here's the thing. That's the trick that the Federal Reserve does. That's one of their tricks. The other trick is just regular money printing, regular inflation, like 3% a year. Okay. And under the old system, without doubling the property prices, 3% inflation, well, that's kind of like forgiving his mortgage. He owes $4 billion. And if you have 3% inflation, he can raise the price on his renters. And what happens is, and the property price goes up 3% as well. He can, he basically gets 3% loan forgiveness. $4 billion times 0.03 is $120 million a year, a free gift. And where does that come from? There's no, when we talk about economics, there's no free money. All right. It comes from someone who has dollar assets. It comes from someone who is a creditor. And those creditors are the laborers and the renters who advance their rent to the landlord. And all of this money is free money. But when you add those two things together, the money inflation and the credit inflation, well, the guy goes from $5 billion in property to $30 billion in property. Now we have the regular underlying 3% inflation. And he's got, how much does he have in mortgages? Well, he's got 30 billion in properties. He owns 6 billion of it. So that leaves 24 billion. Times 0.03. Now you're looking at hundreds and hundreds of, it's actually, I haven't done the math here. 24 times 3 is $720 million. So $750 million. So the guy who was worth $1 billion becomes worth $6 billion, and he gets an extra 720 million, almost doubling what he originally had every year. And if he's lucky, like he was in 2022, I believe, when was the big inflation? The 8% a year. He's going to make over $1 billion in that 1 year. He's going to make more than double what he had. So this is where the money comes from, goes to. The inflation is the billionaire's tax, because billionaires are the ones reaping the benefits of this debt. Workers pay more at the gas pump. They pay more at the grocery store. They pay more on Amazon. And renters pay more in rent. And here's the thing. None of this had anything to do. Like, these are just two tricks that the Federal Reserve uses to take billions, or even sometimes arguably trillions of dollars from working people and transfer it to billionaires without doing anything in the market. Like, they haven't actually done anything. This isn't supply and demand. This isn't, oh, we're making a better product. This isn't, these are just two magic tricks by the Federal Reserve Bank that are transferring those hundreds of billions of dollars every year from, well, maybe not hundreds of billions every year, but tens of billions every year. If you, in my article, I talked about just the transfer in wages, and I came to the number of about 45 billion under a 3% underlying inflation regime is transferred just from wages. Doesn't count rent. Rent is probably another 10 or 15 billion every year to the billionaires. And the Democrats are like, oh, well, You know what it was? You know what it was? It was the Reagan tax cuts. Reagan cut the taxes on the rich. He cut their income taxes. That's what the Democrats are saying. Now, all right, rank and file Democrats probably don't understand this, but billionaires don't pay income tax. They don't pay payroll tax either. Okay, billionaires don't pay income tax. They and they think it's cheating, but and I don't think it's cheating. I don't. Why should anybody have to pay any tax? But the idea is behind income tax is it's a tax on labor. That was the idea. So yeah, the really rich people who are laboring, the very successful lawyers, the very successful doctors, the very successful entrepreneurs who are, salaried software engineers, programmers, they're paying high income tax rates. But Warren Buffett is not. Because neither is Elon Musk most of the time. There are exceptions. Elon Musk he's paid I think it was paid $13 billion one year. But that's because he had to move his money around in a way. The billionaires pay what's called capital gains tax instead of the income tax. And it's a lot lower than the income tax or the combined labor tax. Here I have a chart, and I've used this in a previous podcast, and I reused it in my article. I had put it into a previous article, but if you look at the combined tax on labor versus the tax on capital, the combined tax on labor is the payroll tax, i.e. Social Security and Medicare, an underlying 3% inflation rate, which is the average over the last 50 years, and the income tax. You could see that labor pays about twice as much tax as capital does at every income level. And the interesting thing is labor pays its tax before it sees its check, and capital pays its tax when it cashes out. How do I put this? Elon Musk can make half a $1 trillion with his Tesla stock. And he doesn't pay any tax on it until he sells the stock, because that's the capital gains. Otherwise, it's just an investment that's ongoing. The stock might fall in value. So the billionaires pay later, and the laborers pay before they even see their check. That's how the system is rigged against you. All right. They take their money and it gets poured into it's so bad. It makes me want to just, go. I'm going to take this down here, this year. Okay. It's not just inflation. Inflation is my bugaboo. It's my number one thing, because if you look at the cost of price inflation, well, the average young homeowner is paying double what he would have paid just 25 years ago in 2000. All right. I'm accounting for inflation too, regular underlying inflation. I'm saying with the credit inflation, with the suppression of interest rates, the price of houses has kept up with this consumer price index and doubled it. So if you were to, let me give you one example. If you had a house for $100,000 back in 2000, all right, there weren't too many, right? $200,000 back in 2000. There were quite a few available, and you move it up to 2025 or 2023, 4 is really even better, because that was where the actual peak was. The prices are actually falling. They're going up nominally because of the underlying inflation, but the real price, if you index it for inflation, that $200,000 house, if it goes up the same price as bananas or the patch repair kit or anything like that, it's going to cost about 275,000 today. I'm guessing here. I haven't actually done the math on that, but I would guess about 275,000. And yet it's 450,000. Why is that? Or more? It might even be more than 450,000, but it's roughly doubled. And the reason is they lowered the interest rate and that jacked up the sticker price. So the average young person can't afford the down payment anymore. Because how do you put together even 5% of $500,000? Well, that's $25,000. That's a tough nut for a lot of people just barely getting by to save up. And especially when, well, you can't put it in your bank account because the bank account's paying what? 0.06% or something crazy. I mean, it's way below the rate of inflation. You put your money in there and you're never going to get it back. You're not even going to get the interest rate doesn't even come close to the rate of inflation, or it didn't until recently. So they can't save for a house and they can't afford to buy a house. How do they do it? And one of the facts I put into the piece was the proportion of young people 25 to 35 owning homes went from over 50% in the 80s through the 2000s down to just 37% in 2022. And of course, it's a lot lower now because it's even more unaffordable, because what happened was the Federal Reserve Bank jacked the interest rate up. Now it's almost it's almost impossible for a lot of young people to afford the payment. Even if they save up the down payment, they can't make the payments. In fact, there's a lot of young people who did buy a house 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when interest rates were low, who have an interest rate of 3%, or even like some people got discount rates, whether they're veterans or whatever, at 2.5%, less than the rate of inflation. They can't afford to buy the same house that they're in, let alone go from a starter house to a bigger house. They can't afford to buy the same house that they're in because it would cost them half again as much. And that was one of the reasons why the price of houses, when the Federal Reserve brought interest rates up from 0% in 2020 up to 5% by 2023, and mortgages went from 2.5%, 3% to pretty close to 7% now. The home prices stayed pretty level. And why is that? Because a lot of homeowners were home locked. They couldn't afford to switch over. They couldn't afford to sell and get out of their house. They had to stay in their starter house because they couldn't afford to get to a bigger house. In fact, not only couldn't they afford to get to a bigger house, they can't afford to get to move. If they had to move from state to state, they couldn't afford the same house that they're in. So what happened was there was a housing supply shortage on the market for a long time because everybody was house locked. Nobody would dare to sell. And it was great for the home improvement set. I work in construction. It was great for that because everybody wanted to, well, if I'm stuck in this house, I might as well put an addition on or redo the kitchen or whatever because I'm stuck here. So there was a lot of that going on. But as far as buying new houses, no, the supply was really short. Now, eventually, you see now that the supply has gone up, but there aren't any buyers because, the reason is, well, the prices are still too high compared to with the interest rates where they are. What should happen is the interest rates should stay where they are or even go higher, and the sticker price should fall. It used to be you bought a new house back in the 80s or 90s, and you had a really high interest rate. When I moved to Wisconsin and got married in 91, we bought a house, I think the next year. And my first interest rate was 8.875. And I had great credit. And, the goal of it was you get this house and then you pay off the mortgage as soon as you can because the inflation was very low back then. Now the goal, I told my daughter, both my daughters who had very low credit, low interest rates and great credit. So they got low interest rates. I said, whatever you do, don't pay more than the mortgage minimum because you're 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 paying, we've got, at the time there was 8% inflation, and they had a 2-3% mortgage. I said, "Hey, inflation is basically telling you you don't have to pay all your mortgage back. Why would you do that?" And of course, I've told this story before. I think I told the story about my Venezuelan friend. It's sort of an extreme example, who he bought a house, and a couple years later, the whole house, the value of his mortgage had gone down to $100 from tens of thousands because of inflation in Venezuela. So he paid it off with less than 1 day's pay. But that happens in America too. I mean, when I moved out of my house as a kid in '89, I went to Wisconsin, and I came back and I said, "Dad, I got this great apartment, and it's only $290 a month, and it's right across the street from across the river from Lawrence University. I can use the library there." And he goes, "Oh, and the old man, he went white. He was 290. It's more than my mortgage." Because he had bought his house 15 years, a little bit more than that, little in 1971, right before the big inflation took over. So his mortgage was less than on a 4-bedroom colonial in the Boston area, where there's a heightened price. I mean, Boston is not the most expensive real estate metropolitan area, but it's up there among the top 5 always. There's a couple in California that are higher, and then recently Washington, D.C. But it's I think it might even be higher than New York City. I could be wrong, but it's in the top 5. And my 1-bedroom apartment in rural, I know Appleton, Wisconsin is not rural, it's technically a city, but it's out away from the megalopolis, with suppressed property values, comparatively speaking. The rent on that 1-bedroom apartment was more than the 4-bedroom colonial in the Boston area after less than 20 years of inflation. So this is what I told my daughters. I said, "Don't pay off your mortgage." But here's the thing. The homeowner, the regular homeowner, doesn't benefit from low interest rates because, one, the price goes up and down based on the interest rate anyway, so the payment stays about the same most of the time. We're living in one of those exceptional times, because we had 20 years of suppressed interest rates, and then the Federal Reserve raised it up. So right there, it made it temporarily unaffordable. But as a general rule, it doesn't matter whether to the buyer, whether the price of the house is high or the price of, because they just make the payment. And what they do is if the price is high and they have to move to another house, they have to sell their house at a high price and buy another house at a high price. It's a lateral move. But if you're a real estate investor, a billionaire real estate investor, you benefit in a big way. Okay, let me go to some of the comments here. All right. David Andert says, "I pay 3.25%. That's a good rate. And I always have companies calling, wanting to make me a cash offer, and I could never afford it." Yes, exactly. And you're in the same situation that my daughters are in. I mean, let's face it, if your income goes way up, you can afford to do it. But even then you wonder, like, is it worth it? Is it worth it? Because there's so much, it's so much more. I mean, it's almost at the point where it's half as much, half again as much. Like you go from a payment of $2,500 to $3,700, and you think, is it worth it? I mean, for the same house. All right, let's go to another comment here. I'm loving using these comments here. All right, let's see. Sentinels of Liberty came back, and Let's see. Let's pick one. He had a couple of good comments here. Okay, conversation around inflation deserves attention as well as trying to understand the mechanism surrounding it. Okay, here it is. Here's the point right here. It's an accepted idea or proportion of living in society that nobody really questions. It's part of what I call in my article the billionaire propaganda. It's good for the economy. It's good for the economy. That's what they tell you. To have a little bit of inflation. You don't want to go to deflation. Oh, deflation. That's bad. And anyone who says, well, deflation is good, that's lower prices going down. Why wouldn't you want that? They all say, ooga booga, Great Depression. Ooga booga, Great Depression. Prices go down it's the Great Depression. But prices actually went up and down in the Great Depression. And here's the thing. There's two different things. The Keynesian view is John Maynard Keynes was an economist, and he created sort of a school of economists that believed in inflation to a certain extent, and because it would promote consumption and people not saving their money. And inflation, in that sense, when people think of, okay, a strong economy is inflationary and a weak economy is deflationary. And it is true that when an economy goes into recession, prices tend to fall. But it's not the falling prices that create the recession. It's the falling prices that alleviate the recession. The falling prices are the correction, not the cause. And a lot of people don't understand that. The whole idea behind Keynes was to get people to not to save, but to spend, make a consumer-based economy. And as a reason, and that's what we have in America in this century, more than the last quarter of the 20th century, and much more than the first three quarters of the 20th century. And the economic growth is much slower. I don't know if I brought anything here. I guess I didn't bring any of my charts for that. But if you look at real per capita GDP growth, in other words, how much wealth each American is making and how much it increases per year over the last 50 years. So we've got 25 years of interest rate suppression, and we've got 25 years of maybe not market interest rates, but higher interest rates. And what you find is 2 out of 5 years, we had 3% or more economic growth in the 20th century. And in the 21st century, we've only had 1 year of 3% economic growth. That's per capita, not total GDP growth, because you want to measure it by the person. And that 1 year was the COVID snapback year. So growth has slowed, not accelerated. And here's the other thing. If just think about it from the perspective of, okay, if falling prices are a sign of a bad economy, then wouldn't you think the computer industry would be in tatters? Because computer prices are way down. I spent $2,400 for a desktop that was very slow back in the 90s, and I can buy a nice new laptop for $500 now, and it's quick, many multiples quicker. Televisions. I went into Costco just a couple of days ago. You could buy a giant TV for $300, $400. That's bigger than anyone that anyone ever had when I was a kid. And my parents, I remember they bought a 25-inch color TV, one of the big deep dish ones, in the 70s. Cost them $400. Now that's 1970s dollars. And you could buy one that's twice that size now, more than twice that size, for the same deflated price dollars. Are TVs Is the TV industry in recession? I mean, you could go down the list, and anything that is not regulated by government, the prices have been falling, if not in nominal terms, at least in real terms. I mean, that TV, the TVs have come down. I mean, or maybe over time they'll go up with all of the commodity price inflation. But the uh, the most successful companies are the ones lowering their prices. I mean, cell phone companies. Cell phone service is much cheaper than it was 20 years ago. You think they're poor? Have you seen how many advertisements they do? How many movie stars they have promoting their companies? No, they're not in recession, but their prices are going down. Inflation is not stimulative. It's anti-stimulative. It is it is an economic depressant, whereas deflation is a stimulant. It basically tells the consumers, "Hey, this stuff's cheaper. Come buy it." And of course, over time, you would expect a lot of products to get cheaper. Think about it from the perspective of economic progress. I mean, it used to be that I remember I'm an oldster. I remember roofing in the 1980s. That was how I got through undergrad college. I was a roofer for a company in the Boston area, and we do shingle roofs, and it'd be tap 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 with the hammer on all the tab shingles. We mostly did rubber roofs, but we did occasionally, but we hardly ever did any of the 3 tab regular shingle roofs on residential houses. Oh, but then they invented the nail gun, and it got cheap. The nail guns got cheap. All of a sudden, we were able to do a whole house, a big house, in a day with just a couple of guys. He started doing them all the time. Why? And of course, the prices came down because it got cheaper to do, more efficient. And that's the same with almost everything across the board. It's more agriculture is more efficient. The production per acre is more efficient. So food prices, relatively speaking, have come down. Now I know nominally the prices are going up. And in my article, I also talk about how the federal government has this policy of promoting more, or not more, higher prices. Like they actually have a program called agricultural price support. And by support, they don't mean helping the poor people. They mean raising the prices for everyone who eats, which I think includes poor people. So we as taxpayers, we're double losers because not only do we have to pay taxes for the agricultural price support programs, but then we have to pay again at the grocery store and also at the tailor because the price supports also include wool and cotton manufacturers. We have to pay the higher prices when we buy the stuff. So we are two-time losers, and the system is rigged against you. Again, in that respect too. I'm droning on here. We're not droning on, but I don't want to go too long. I've already gone over my half hour. So I'm gonna wind up here, but I want to point out that the most of the subsidies go to the wealthy agribusinesses. You know, when we pay our taxes and it goes to the U.S. Department of Agriculture and it goes to the price support program, it goes to the companies that have the lawyers and the tax accountants that take maximum advantage of the subsidy. I mean, just look at it. It's the same thing in agriculture as it is in space and with electronic vehicles with Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a fanatically efficient tax farmer in the sense that he is able to gobble up subsidies in a way that nobody in human history has ever been able to do. And that happens in agriculture as well. It's not the people getting the agricultural subsidies, as a general rule, are not the family farmers who produce the best produce. That's not how it works. It's the big companies that have the lawyers and accountants. All right. I wanted to, all right, well, a couple more. Okay, a couple more comments. Is our host in Massachusetts? Yes, I am. I am a Massachusetts born and bred. I lived in Wisconsin for 12 years, from 89 to 2000. I guess that's 11 years. I don't know. It worked out to almost 12. And, oh no, to 2001. That's why. That's right. Early 2001. So I just 12 years, but I am a native born Massachusetts guy. And I guess I went against the grain because I'm not a socialist. And that's, but I do sympathize with the working man. It's just that I'm not one of the Democrats who thinks, oh, well, we'll solve the billionaire problem by taxing the billionaires. No, you won't. You'll solve the billionaire problem by not giving them extra subsidies with magic Federal Reserve tricks. That's what I say. Okay. And let's see. A couple more comments here. Okay. Yeah, it's astonishing how much we pay when you break it down. I didn't even finish. I mean, I didn't even get to the healthcare, where young families pay double. Your healthcare payment, anyone who's gone Cobra with a Cobra payment, it's just astronomical. Well, why? Because we have this weird system where the private system subsidizes the public system, and the young, struggling, poor families pay double the healthcare premium so that Medicare won't bankrupt all the hospitals. They pay double. All right, read the article. It's got links there. So, but absolutely, yeah. There's more. I didn't in my article. I didn't even get to the whole. I didn't even get to the whole prescription drug thing. I mean, there's a reason why Americans pay double what the Europeans pay for prescription drugs. There's no reason why a generic insulin should cost what it was costing, $600 a month until recently. And it's still, even with the Biden change, it's still more than the world average. There's no reason why we can't import it from Canada for less, or whatever, or produce it for less in America. The system is rigged against you, the working person. And there's so many of them. All right, let's see. Okay, great show. Oh, I'm glad. Okay, and boy, the comments from Sentinels of Liberty. Okay, you're for real. I am for real solutions for the working man, and it's not unpopular for many who think it through, but it does go against conventional wisdom. So that's true, and inconvenient for the current government. Yes, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to finish up once again with a plea for, hey, support me, buy me a coffee. I got the link in the final show song. And today, well, inflation, it's about inflation. It's about the Fed. So listen to my rock song outro today. Good night. See you next week.
our fate.